Should you buy the 55mm f1.8 Zeiss or the 50mm f2.5 Sony G lens? Well, I was having a really hard time, so I got both, and I want to help you guys out in this video. Now, for me, I'm finally getting back into shooting for fun, not just for business, and I bought a new A7CR because I wanted something compact that could fit in the smallest bag possible with a few lenses. And I already own this 55 1.8 at our studio, but it needs to stay there. So putting this kit together, I have the 28mm f2, which I love. And over the last 3 weeks, I've been testing these out. So I'm gonna show you guys some different images that I shot, some comparison images, and what I discovered, hopefully to help you make a better informed choice, because the videos that I saw out there weren't that great. And when I looked at the specs online, you see one thing, but it's a whole different world when you have them in your hand. Now, the 55 arrived first. This thing is the more expensive lens, but you can get it on sale much closer to the price of this one. And surprisingly, even though it's 280 grams, about 80 grams more than my 28 f2, it just feels much more heavy. And I think that's because it's a lot more front heavy on the lens, and I was having a tough time fitting it in the back. And so when I got this one in, my goodness, the size difference is crazy. I mean, look at that right there. I'll show a B-roll shot as well. It's almost half the length. Now, as far as weight, this thing is rated at 174 grams. And in reality, it feels like half the weight, half the depth. And it says it's a little thicker, but it's only because you have this aperture ring. Other than that, the thickness is about the same and actually tapers down at the bottom to give you more space for your hand on the grip. And of course, the aperture ring is a bonus. You can also declick it for video. You have a manual focus switch, and that little button on the side that's programmable, which is really nice. Although I will say I kept accidentally bumping the aperture ring, and that got a little bit annoying. Now, when you put on the lens hood, I mean, the difference is crazy. This one is massive on this, whereas the 52.5 comes with this tiny little hood that clicks in. And so looking at the difference now, I mean, this is absolutely crazy right here. And the other nice thing is that unlike this hood style, with this one, you can actually put an ND filter on the edge, especially with the variable ND that you want to adjust, and that is what I'm doing. I have one ND filter for both lenses. My kit, they all have 49mm, which is really convenient. And with that, I can actually put this lens into my bag with the hood on and an ND filter. And on the other side, I have room for my camera body. I also have some zippers in the front and back for ND filters and other things. And with that 50mm 2.5, I can actually fit my microphone in as well, all in one small high quality bag. I'll link this down below as well. I bought multiple bags to see what would work best. Whereas with the 55, I cannot. I have to take this off. I have to close it down. So I'm just leaving the lens hood at home. So if you really care about size and weight, the difference is way bigger than what you would expect online. Now, that's one part of it. The second part is image quality, and I really wanted something that would have an f1.8 aperture. I'm buying a full frame for a reason compared to getting an A6700. I want the extra blur. So was it worth it? Well, let's take a look at the series of images I have, both for the extra blur, both sharpness, and just the quality difference. Here is the first shot right here. My lighting was a little bit different, and you guys could see on the left-hand side, I'll have the 51.8, and then on the right side, I'll have the f2.5. Yeah, we definitely have more blur over here. The bokeh right here, it's a lot more noticeable because it's just really round, but you have some of that onioning effect compared to more of a cat eye on the edge over here. And let's go ahead and take a look at us. My hair was messed up before I got my haircut there. And I don't know if you guys could see the difference in sharpness, but I'm already seeing that the 2.5 looks sharper. But overall, I would say in this image, with the background being so far away, It's not that big of a difference in terms of pop. And here's the next image right here. Both are at f2.5 right now. This is just a difference in focal length. So you see with the 55, we have a little bit more blurred out bokeh balls. The background has a little bit more compression. And in this next shot, where the background is very close, you don't really see any difference. I mean, they both look very similar. So let's go ahead and take a look at some detail right here. And in this shot, the hair looks very similar, but the focus is on her eyes. And here, I do see a little bit more sharpness on the 50mm. Here's one where the background kind of flows more away, and the left side, the 55-1.8, just looks more pleasant. The one on the right still looks good, but the background is a little bit more distracting. Let's take a look at the detail. Both look pretty good in this shot right here. And both of these look good as well. The background is further away. The 1.8 just gives you a nice soft blur, whereas the f2.5, I don't say it looks like a cell phone with really, really good fake blur, but I would just prefer a little bit more. And with this shot right here, honestly, the f2.5 doesn't look that bad. Yeah, it's a little bit less blur, but I would be totally fine with the image on the right. Let's look at detail. Well, once again, the f2.5 does have more fine detail, even at higher ISOs here. I'll show you some subjects that are further away in a sec, but here's the minimal focusing distance. We have 1.8 on the left compared to 2.5, and this tiny little lightweight lens can focus a lot closer than the older Zeiss lens. Of course, the Zeiss has a nice blur, but because we're getting closer, we have extra blur as well. Here's an example of just a minimal focusing distance. The right-hand side, the 2.5, focuses a lot closer. Of course, you could crop on the 55mm, especially with the high-resolution camera. And here's my last example, both at the minimal focusing distances. It is nice to be able to get some shots that are much more close-up. I have a few night photos to show you with some differences in ISO because of the extra stop of light. And here, man, I really like the 55-1.8. I like the extra blur. That bush or whatever it is isn't that distracting. I personally like the cat eye bokeh as well compared to f2.5, and I did try to frame it the same. And then if we go in and we look at detail, I mean, the 50mm f2.5 is just quite a bit sharper, and that makes me sad actually. In this shot at f2.5, I was at 12,800 ISO compared to 6,400. But looking at this on my laptop, well, this is actually a 10-bit HEIC or HEF image. I mean, the noise difference is not that apparent. Of course, we're taking 64 megapixel and scrunching it down here, but I do like that the background's a little bit more blurred out. We have the same thing at this image, 12,800 versus 6,400. And after doing these, honestly, with one of these newer Sony cameras, I would not really care about the difference of, ISO and having to kick that up with the f2.5. And now let's finish off comparing the sharpness and the extra blur. On the left, 55mm just looks a little bit more pleasant, but with the background far away, it's not a huge difference. Same thing in this shot right here, just a little bit more blur, a little bit less distraction with the f1.8. But if we start to look at the detail, especially with the subject further away, you just notice how much more detail you get with the f2.5 lens. Here's another example of a similar scenario. Let's go ahead and come in here. And yeah, the 55 looks good, but just looking at the face there, it doesn't seem like I'm resolving all 64 megapixel. I think it's a 64. It just doesn't. Whereas with the f2.5 lens, it looks gorgeous, like a high resolution full frame sensor. You can also see the difference in bokeh right here, zooming in. We have these bokeh balls. They don't look fantastic. They look a lot better on the 55. Here's another example of that same scenario. Both shots do look good, but the difference in detail is absolutely noticeable. But of course, I have to point out that I am pixel peeping. I'm punching into this, but one reason for me to buy this high resolution full frame is to be able to crop and to be able to use a lens, one of these, in crop mode. So I have a wide lens that I can crop in from a 28 to say a 40, and then I can have a 50 that can also crop in for portraits. Two prime lenses, small, lightweight, very versatile. And in this wide shot, yeah, we have a little bit more blur on the 55mm. Both look pretty good. I prefer the 55, but then cropping in, my goodness, the detail level. And what I've noticed taking a ton of shots, I'm not showing you all of them, is just that in general, the f2.5 lens, smaller, lighter, sharper, but the autofocus is also better. In video, it's not hugely noticeable, but for photos, sometimes it just doesn't perfectly focus. And I think this is one of the examples where I think it should be sharper. It might just be slightly off, but looking at the image, it's not back focus. I don't think it's front focus. The whole image is sharper, and maybe when your subject is just larger, filling up the whole frame, not like a upper body portrait, there's less resolving power. That could also be it. We have two more photos here. I did one to match the apertures at a higher amount, but this shot of this Tesla, the one on the left, you actually get some of that 3D pop and that subject separation because the subject is very big. Whereas with the f2.5 here, it looks like, a cell phone photo snapped it as far as the depth of field. And that is a little disappointing to me. And then for this last image, both are at f5.6, just to look at ultimate detail. If you stop it down, and if I go ahead and look here close to the center, I don't know if you guys could tell, but the 55mm is actually sharper, more detailed here. I actually see fine text where it's blurred out right over here. So it looks like this lens, when you stop it down, it is a little sharper, but at the f1.8, where that is where I would want to use it at, it is not as sharp as the f2.5. And I definitely don't want to buy this to use it at f2.5 and deal with the extra size and weight. And then if we go ahead and take a look at the corners here, the corners are a little bit more detailed on the 50mm cheaper lens on both sides right there. You definitely see it right over here compared to this side. So with all of that said, if you're trying to decide between these, I would say if you're okay with having a little less blur, this lens is just better in every single way. I love the size and weight. I love the lens hood. Unfortunately, you're giving up a lot just to have a little bit more blur and maybe a little bit better in low light. But even that doesn't matter. It's mostly just that extra blur. And I wish we had another lens that was as good as this. We have that 51.8. I don't know, maybe I'll try that. The autofocusing kind of sucks. The minimal focus distance sucks. But I'm gonna be sending this one back just because all of the downsides for just a little bit more blur, and maybe try to get a little bit closer in my shots if I want that. And I think if I wasn't looking at them side by side, I'd probably be more happier with the blur on this one. But Sony did create a really nice, small, lightweight lens that pairs with one of the A7C bodies. So yeah, I would probably not recommend this, even though we use this at the office. It's our main A camera. It works perfect for that scenario. In the real world, this one is a lot better. So you guys let me know your thoughts down below. Hopefully this video helped you guys out. This has been Max, and I'll see you in the next video.